Hi there, and welcome to Level 4 in AgilePoint's Agentic AI Maturity Model, Vendor-Neutral Agentic AI Mesh. In this installment, you're going to see how AgilePoint can orchestrate, provide governance, and observability across agents from multiple different vendors. An important capability because regardless of where your agents come from, AgilePoint provides universal guardrails, grounding, and observability, all without the need for complex protocols like A2A or MCP, though AgilePoint does support those protocols. So to get to the crux of Level 4, rather than building a process that we can adapt, as we'd shown in the previous installment, we can have multiple agents from any vendor reinvent the process on the fly based on the context of the request. Now with most agentic vendors, you'll see an agent in charge of planning and will generate code on the fly to execute that plan, which sounds impressive, but as we all know, runs significant risk of hallucination. Now in the AgilePoint case, we eliminate hallucination because we can create tools for our agents ahead of time. So rather than risk hallucination, the planning agents will dynamically select from a catalog of vetted and pre-approved process fragments to carry out that plan. In this case, we're going to see multiple agents from different vendors working together and without the need for complex protocols like A2A or MCP, though we do support those protocols. And just to highlight variation in planning and execution, we're going to run a second scenario with different feedback. But as I mentioned in the intro, regardless of the agents that you deploy, AgilePoint provides universal grounding, guardrails, and observability for agent behavior. Now to help illustrate the ability to dynamically reinvent a process on the fly, we're going to be using a customer feedback application as an example. So as you can see here, I have a simple three-step application: start, stop, and in between, I'm going to capture the customer sentiment around a recent interaction with an organization. Now, once the customer sentiment has been captured, it's going to be handed over to LangGraph, our planning agent. LangGraph is in charge of understanding the customer sentiment and putting together a plan to address it. It has access to all of the relevant grounding data, in this case, the customer's transaction history, and builds a response plan. Now, to execute that plan, LangGraph has access to process fragments and AgilePoint integrations to execute the plan. Now, in the event that this feedback involves a billing issue or some sort of refund, we're going to see AgilePoint orchestrate a handoff to Agentforce, who will process the refund and invoke a number of AgilePoint sub-agents to notify the customer. Okay, so with that, let's take a look at Agentic AI Maturity Model Level 3 in action. So here we have our web form, and bear in mind this feedback could come through many different channels. Think about an email or a recorded phone conversation. But as you're seeing, we have our customers' details, as well as the nature of their feedback being related to a refund. So we can expect to see both LangGraph as well as Agentforce invoked as a part of this process. Okay, so let's go ahead and kick it off. So let's go ahead and bring up the process viewer here so that we can see both of our agents being invoked. All right, so as you can see here, both of our agents have been invoked, which means we can now bring up AgilePoint's Observability UI, the Adaptive Orchestration Monitor. So what you're seeing here is an actual representation of the behavior of our agents. And as we showed you earlier in design mode, we have our simple three-step application. So here we're seeing the various outputs from our agents, starting with Agentforce. As you can see here, it has processed the refund and invoked a number of AgilePoint sub-agents to update the customer. On the left-hand side, we have the output from LangGraph, who has chosen to create a personalized article based on the customer's context and invoked a number of AgilePoint sub-agents to write, package, and deliver that article. Okay, so all of our process fragments, integrations have all been invoked, and they're now working to deliver these items via email to our customer. So if I head into our inbox, you're seeing here, my refund has been processed, and an AgilePoint sub-agent has been invoked to notify the customer, as well as the personalized article that we've just referenced. Okay, so let's run this application once more, just to show some variation in planning. So in this case here, rather than a billing concern, we're going to select a technical issue. And again, want to see the variation in planning and execution. Okay, so bringing up the Adaptive Orchestration Monitor for instance 2, as you can see here, the planning and execution has totally changed. We still have our simple three-step application, but you'll notice that we only have outputs coming from LangGraph. So here, because this was a technical issue, and again have access to grounding data and the customer's context, the first sub-agent that was invoked is going to create a support ticket. Our second agent has written a personalized troubleshooting guide as well as a knowledge base article. And again, all of these items are now going to be delivered to me via email. So finally, I mentioned earlier in the video that while AgilePoint supports protocols like MCP, that they're not required due to AgilePoint's native orchestration and integration engine. So as a final demo, I'm going to demonstrate how a large language model, in this case Claude Desktop, can also trigger the same process by connecting to AgilePoint's MCP server. So as a first step, let's provide the same feedback that we entered into our web form. And as you're seeing here, Claude is intelligent enough to ask for both my name as well as my contact information. Okay, there we go. Okay, so as you're seeing here, the process is now being kicked off. And finally, I'm going to bring up the adaptive orchestration monitor to see that the process has now launched.